Another week, another Grand Prix, and we're back in Montreal for the first race here since 2019 and Nicholas Latifi's first and last home race in F1. But we've got a race weekend to talk about, so relax and kick back for the next 8 minutes or so as we go over everything that happened in the world of F1 this weekend. And just before we start, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the video, and let's get into it. Well, at the start of practice, the entire Alpine car of Ocon was undrivable because a paper bag got stuck in the brakes and a few drivers outbraked themselves, got blocked and nearly spun going into the last corner. Verstappen topped the timing sheets with Sainz in second and an incredible performance from Alonso getting into third on the mediums. Both Astons were in the top 10 and Russell finished higher than Hamilton with Leclerc behind Perez in 5th. Further down the grid, Albon did well to finish in 13th, and with the Alphas being Ferrari customers, obviously they were both but the biggest surprise came in 19th place as Latifi finished higher than another car. Now, this is a big moment for the sport, but it's not because of a mechanical issue, but simply because Latifi is too good for F1. After Leclerc's engine gave up on him in Baku last week, he will start at the back of the grid, and for FP2, the team put a used turbo in the car which gave up on him as well. Some big shocks in FP2 as Verstappen finished first again, with the Ferrari second and third. The Aston Martin is actually looking pretty good this weekend, with Vettel putting it in fourth in front of Alonso and Gasly. Russell once again finished 6 places above Hamilton with Perez down in 11th. But normal running resumed as Latifi finished last of the cars that set laps as Bottas once again couldn't compete in a practice session. But he was only 3/10 behind his teammate. In FP3, it rained. Essentially, God pissed all over the circuit on Saturday, which meant we would get 2 full wet sessions. No surprise as 40-year-old Fernando Alonso went quickest in this session. Most drivers at this age have already settled into their Monaco yachts or mansions in Brixton. But here was good old Fernando, who 7 years ago was driving a McLaren dressed as a Williams around this track looking like an amateur, setting the quickest time. So there's no surprise to see that Gasly slapped it into P2 and Vettel stuck the Aston into P3. There wasn't a front runner up until Perez in 8th, with Verstappen 1 place behind him and Sainz another position down. And you know the drill by now if you've seen any of my videos. Russell was 8 places above his teammate, Albon was also ahead of his teammate, and Latifi finished last of the drivers that could set laps. I could literally write this part of the script 4 weeks in advance and still have to say the same every single time. In Q1, Williams decided to race with the Williams tyre compound, as is the rest of the grid, which is not a good idea if you're planning on competing with other cars at a decent speed. But it was Alonso scrapping for the fastest time with Verstappen in the first session of qualifying. But lower down the grid, it's time to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, Goat Watch. 2 personal bests, home track, wet conditions. All he needs is a good final sector and his first race at Montreal, he'll get out of Q1 for the first time this season. Until he fucked it and lost it at the Wall of Champions, truly living up to its name. Gasly disappointed, as did the Astons, which resorted back to the tractor that sponsors their car. Into Q2 and Albon's Williams didn't like running in another qualifying session and decided to not let him turn, but Alex managed to find reverse and keep it going. Same can't be said about the driver who replaced him though, as Perez also couldn't turn and ended up getting stuck in the barriers and not being able to put it in reverse. So he eventually had to switch off the car and tyre and decided he would trek through the Canadian forest to get back to the pits instead of, getting on a moped and heading back on the road. At the end of Q2, with McLaren messing up Norris, Perez out of the session and Leclerc not setting a lap, there was only 2 spots outside of the top 10 to claim. One of them was Albon, and the other was Valtteri Bottas as he got out-qualified by his teammate for Guan Yu Zhou's first Q3 appearance. Alonso was once again fighting with Verstappen with a special mention for Schmacher, who put it into 6th ahead of his teammate as well. Q3 now and time for some drama. Essentially, there was 3 drivers in 3 different teams fighting out for pole. But before we get onto that, Mercedes are idiots. Or it was Russell's fault. Why would you put Russell on softs when you could potentially get a top 3 if you just, were normal and just used the Inter? In the final runs of Q3 at the top, Verstappen had the quickest second sector and Sainz had the fastest first. They were pretty much neck and neck. Verstappen finished his lap 3/10 up and Sainz was up until the last corner where he nearly lost it and undid all his hard work. And then out of the blue, Alonso put his Alpine on the front row without even needing a purple sector. The man is 41 in a month. How? But I guess we have to give a clap to Haas for a 5.6 in qualifying and Alpine for a 2.7. And I guess I have to say well done Lewis for finally beating his teammate, but it's probably only because George went for softs on a track that was still wet. What a qualifying, and welcome back Canada and goodbye Nicholas Latifi. Well, the race got off very well as the TV director missed the start, but off the line Verstappen and Alonso were pretty equal, and Max got into turn 1 first. I would have loved to have seen what Fernando could have done if he nailed the start, but there were a lot of different stories up and down the grid. First there was Leclerc in 19th trying to crawl up the order, The Haas is up in 5th and 6th, and obviously Alonso trying to get on the podium, with Sainz hoping to get that elusive first win. Alonso managed to stay ahead of Sainz, and Magnussen battled with Hamilton again, which meant that Kevin got wing damage and had to box a few laps later, and Schumacher also lost 2 places on the first lap as well. On lap 10, Perez retired again, but this time it wasn't his fault, and this brought out the virtual safety car. This brought Verstappen in and most of the grid apart from Alonso, as they went for a long first stint on the mediums. Then Schumacher got overtaken by Ocon, and that killed his car as it didn't want to live anymore. So once again, Haas got a double Q3 and didn't score a single point. Leclerc also quietly made his way up the grid as Zhou was stuck behind Stroll in a DRS train, and on lap 49, Tsunoda pitted and then crashed without even taking a corner and caused another VSC. This allowed Sainz to pit for fresh hards, and with these new tyres, we were going to get around 15 laps of Sainz trying to get past Verstappen. But although Sainz got close a few times, the Red Bull was just too quick for the red tractor and he had to settle for second. But you have to give credit to Max because he hasn't made mistakes at all this season and looks the favourite to win it in December, especially if the Ferraris keep conking out. But I'm a big fan of this top 10 as Stroll with his bus driving skills was able to somehow get a point from 17th on the grid, and Alpha got a double points finish as they finished 8th and 9th. Alonso got very unlucky with the VSCs as he had just passed the pits by the time they had come out and had to settle for 7th behind his teammate in 6th. And well done to Charles, who did get a bit lucky with safety cars but ultimately made quite a few overtakes to get into 5th. And Mercedes were 3rd and 4th, with Hamilton somehow being a better driver when he has a broken back. But that's all from me about Canada. Next up is Silverstone in 2 weeks, so I'll see you then, but for now, keep tabs on my community post for any updates on anything, and most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye.